So tonight I'm going to take 15 or 20 minutes at the insistence of our mayor, who asked me to do this just as I was retired, and tell you about Keene in the 1870s, what life was like here at that time, and how and why Keene became a city at that time. And as Jay suggested, I was pleased to find some political controversy involved with this process. So Keene was a rapidly growing community in 1870 with a population of almost 6,000 people, which had nearly doubled since the arrival of the railroad a little over 20 years earlier. The town had 1,185 dwelling units at that time. It was home to more than 30 manufacturing firms that made products ranging from bricks, woolens, shoes, pails, and circular saws, to furniture, glue, soap, wooden boxes, and pottery. It was also home to 5 banks and more than 100 retail outlets. As the county seat, it was the site of the county courthouse, and consequently, home to those who worked for the county and in related professions, including 11 active attorneys. The railroad, with lines departing to the south, north, and west, had quickly transformed the town into the economic center of southwest New Hampshire. Passengers, raw material, and finished products rolled in and out of the town several times each day. And now a 4th rail line was planned that would connect our community with towns and cities to the east. Keene was at a crossroads. Industrial expansion and economic growth were burgeoning. There was some concern among residents that the town meeting form of government would not be sufficient to manage this growth. Could a board of 3 selectmen and dozens of other volunteer town officers and committee members, along with an annual town meeting that might attract many hundreds of residents, continue to efficiently plan and budget for the needs of the developing community? The selectmen, 3 of them here, were after all managing an $81,000 annual budget, equal to almost $2 million today. So this question had arisen several years earlier when some in the community suggested that it might be time to adopt a city charter and the resulting municipal form of government. As with many proposed significant changes throughout history, there was immediate resistance to the idea. Those opposed to the concept suggested that the current form of government had worked just fine for 130 years, so why upset a good thing and make a change just for the sake of change? The topic was added to the town meeting warrant for discussion at the end of the Civil War, early in 1865. The vote was 411 people against adopting a city charter and city government, and 211 in favor of the warrant article. And this topic was then placed on the warrant for several years in a row, but it never came close to being approved. The New Hampshire Sentinel was opposed to the proposed change. Prior to the 1869 town meeting, the newspaper printed a long column outlining 7 reasons for not adopting a city charter. The most persuasive being that city governments are always more expensive than town governments. There were no checks and balances on the city councilmen, who could appropriate what they pleased and spend as they wished, and there would be way too much power in the hands of a few elected officials, who could levy heavy taxes as they saw fit. The Sentinel item concluded with a statement that the city government was, quote, founded on the idea that the great body of the people are unfit or unwilling to take charge of their own affairs, and that these can be better managed by a select few. In short, it took power away from the voters and gave too much power to the government. The referendum lost that year by the wide margin of 177 in favor and 784 against a city government. Then, as now, letters to the editor concerning the issue made their way to the Sentinel, most of them opposed to the idea of change. One writer summed up the argument concisely and instantly when he wrote, "We have a lovely village and should maintain that. We don't need bigger government and the resulting increased expenses to be paid by taxpayers." So that's where the matter stood when the decade of the 1870s began. At the town meeting in March of that year, the margin of defeat was even wider than the year before. In truth, however, Keene was no longer simply a lovely village, but was a swelling and prosperous large town. Economics and modern technology were developing rapidly in the community. The large Cheshire Railroad repair shops opened on Emerald Street in the late 1860s and employed more than 100 people by the 1870s. Beaver Mills on Railroad Street, a large complex of factory buildings, opened in 1872. The Cheshire Chair Company and Keene Furniture Company moved in that year. Both made use of an abundant local raw material, wood from the local forest. Cheshire Chair quickly hired 50 employees and turned out about 100,000 chairs each year. The power used to operate the mill and machinery illustrated another important industrial development. With the transition from water power to steam power produced by coal-fired boilers, factories no longer had to be near water. They didn't have to be on the rivers and streams. The Ashwellet Boot and Shoe Companies, large new factory on Leverett Street, opened for business. The Faulkner and Colony Woolen Mill continued to expand, building upon its success during the Civil War when it filled huge orders for uniform cloth and blankets for the U.S. Army. James Taft founded a new pottery in town in 1871. It made utilitarian pottery pieces using clay from Keene's glacial lake bed. As the Hampshire Pottery Company, it would later go on to become a national leader in the art pottery movement in America during its 50 years in business. In 1873, businessman John Artemus Wright was on a business trip on horseback in Troy when he discovered some diatomaceous earth beside the road where a cow was stuck in the mud. He thought it was rather unusual, so he had it tested and found out that indeed it was diatomaceous earth, and he found out that you could make silver polish with that because it was microscopic fossils and it would clean silver, but it wouldn't scratch it. So he started a new business, J.A. Wright and Company, in the Eagle Hotel, where he was part owner. He bought the piece of land in Troy, brought the mud, the diatomaceous earth, up to the Eagle and made silver cream out of it, and then he took it by wheelbarrow load to the train station where he sold it to grand hotels throughout New England, and the company was off and running. The company grew through effective advertising and quality products. This is their new plant that they built in 1940. Metal polishes that they made were sold throughout the Western Hemisphere, and they became a world leader in the metal polish industry through 5 generations before, as you probably remember, the company closed locally in 2006. John Simons opened his large tannery in West Keene. The J&F French company produced hundreds of carriages and sleighs annually, and George Ball's Brickyard also made use of clay from the lake bed, making millions of bricks. The new Clipper Machine Works, located near the depot in South Keene, manufactured award-winning horse-drawn equipment that was sold across the country. Among the many retail outlets in town were 2 that survived into recent decades: Tilden's Book and Stationery Store and the Bullard and Shedd Drugstore, both of which survived for over a century and a half. These and dozens of other retail establishments took advantage of the growing commercialism of the Christmas holiday, advertising in the town's 2 newspapers that they had wonderful gift ideas for all readers for their holiday shopping needs. The availability of social and cultural activities was increasing as well. Keene boasted 3 professional bands, several clothing shops, 3 professional photographers, 7 saloons and restaurants, a bowling alley, a billiard hall, and Otto Lettenmeyer's Ladies' Ice Cream Saloon. I'm sure exactly what that was. Otto ran that. The Barker Block at the beginning of Court Street was Keene's first condominium complex. It was built in 1870, and the owner ran afoul of the law when he illegally raffled off some of the condo units to generate interest and boost sales. The following year, the city erected the Soldiers Monument on Central Square in recognition of the Keene men who served in the Civil War. The monument was created by well-known sculptor Martin Milmore. Civil War General Judson Kilpatrick delivered the dedication speech in October of 1871, and another Civil War general, James A. Garfield, was one of the dignitaries in attendance that day. And less than 10 years later, of course, he was elected President of the United States. The Keene Natural History Society was formed in 1872. It was the predecessor of the Historical Society of Cheshire County. Numerous debating, social, charitable, and service clubs were organized during these years. With all of this going on, a committee of leading businessmen and professional men from the community, including George Twitchell, shown here, was formed in 1872 to draft a city charter that was more acceptable to the residents and to try to educate them about the process and the potential impact on the community. The committee met to discuss the charter and determine ways to appease public concerns. Much of the wording regarding the length of terms of officers and the extent of their powers was apparently removed from the charter. It was decided that the residents should have input through a public vote on those issues. Those changes and an explanation of the other sections of the lengthy 17-chapter charter apparently eased the concerns of many residents, and the Sentinel came around and decided to support city government as well. The state legislature approved the charter on July 3rd of 1873, and it was sent back to Keene for a vote one more time. 85% of the legal voters attended the town meeting on March 10 of 1874, at which the charter was finally approved by a vote of 783 people in favor and 589 opposed. The new city government was officially organized on May 5th of 1874, and the town of Keene ceased to exist. Keene industrialist Horatio Colony, shown here, was chosen as the first mayor. In the transition from a town overseen by 3 selectmen, the new city government was composed of a mayor, 5 aldermen from the newly created city wards, and a city council of 15 men. Yes, it was too early still in local history for women to be allowed to serve in the governing body. And so, 150 years ago, Keene became a city. Once the town's conservative Yankee citizens were convinced that the changes might be good for Keene and that it wouldn't damage their wallets too much. A city seal was quickly adopted that you see here, containing a figure of justice surrounded by symbols of commerce, industry, and agriculture. After the city was formed, further transformations and improvements transpired in Keene in the rest of the 1870s. A modern 5-story Victorian high school building was constructed on Winter Street in 1875 and 76. The large building was constructed with more than 1 million locally made bricks. Every classroom was ventilated, and the bell tower reached 127 feet into the sky. The new school contained a gymnasium, science laboratories, a school library, and an exhibition hall seating 500 people. The Keene Public Library was incorporated into the city government in 1875, becoming a free library without fees for the residents of Keene. The Ladies' Sewing Circle of the Unitarian Church raised funds to develop an assisted living facility for those in need, resulting in the Invalids Home, which was incorporated in 1874, was later known as Prospect Place, and it became the oldest residential provider in New Hampshire. Prospect Place's most recent transformation is as part of Covenant Living in Keene. The Keene Driving Park was established in 1875. This trotting race track and the surrounding park offered a 1,500-seat grandstand. And it wasn't used only for horse racing, but also for fairs, balloon ascensions, military encampments, and many other public and social activities. In December of 1878, the long-anticipated Manchester and Keene Railroad finally opened, providing transportation for freight and passengers to Cheshire County towns to the east and beyond. Leaving from Keene's Main Street, it passed through Roxbury, Marlborough, and Harrisville before connecting with other railroads in Hancock and Greenfield, New Hampshire. And the route shortened the trip from Keene to Concord by 48 miles. In Keene, a mechanical fire alarm system was installed. Street mailboxes were introduced, and the first telephones were installed in homes and businesses. In March of 1879, women were permitted to vote at the school district meeting for the first time. And Miss Abby Bickford, shown here, was the first woman elected to the school board in that year. This was one step on the way to universal women's suffrage in the 20th century. These examples of social activism and political reform in Keene were harbingers of the progressive era that would seek political and business and education reforms while improving working and living conditions across the country in the near future. When the new decade of the 1880s arrived, the city of Keene counted a population of just under 6,800 residents, an increase of almost 100 people a year during the 1870s. The city's industrial base also expanded significantly during that 10-year period, jumping from 30 to 46 manufacturing firms, including the Keene Glue Company, which you see here. The hard-fought battle to introduce city government had been successful, and the new municipal government was poised to lead and to guide the rapidly growing community of Keene. The concluding statement from Mayor Horatio Colony's first mayoral address in 1874 still rings true today. He suggested that the new city government, quote, should have but one purpose, the advancement of every interest that would tend to promote and increase the growth and welfare of our beautiful city. Thank you.
So when we think about the role of a mayor in our community, we understand that the mayor as a leader helps to set the vision and the priorities of the city. They make key decisions about local policy and programs, oversee public services that are essential for keeping our city running, safe, and a welcoming place to live. They are the face of the community, understanding community needs. To take a look back at any one particular mayor's term in office is to analyze a moment in our city's history. Having 4 of our mayors here tonight, we can come to understand more about how different leadership styles have impacted Keene in different ways. It may reveal similar challenges our city has faced over the past few decades, and it provides a historical context for understanding how our city has evolved. So tonight we invite our 4 mayors to come together and share their insights into their roles as city leaders, change makers, and stewards of the community trust. We ask that they keep their responses to questions a little brief, so we have enough time for everybody to respond. So tonight we have Aaron Lipsky, who served as mayor of Keene from 1988 to 1993. Kendall Lane was our city's mayor from 2012 to 2019. George Hansel served as mayor of Keene from 2020 to 2022, and of course, Jay Kahn, our current mayor. So I want to thank you all for agreeing to share your story with us today, and I appreciate you being here, really. And to all the city council members and staff who have joined us here as well. So we have some questions that we have prepared, and as Rick said, we'll come around if you have any questions in a bit. Feel free to write them down. We want to make sure we have enough time to accommodate those as well. So I'm going to start, and I think I'll start by asking Mayor Lipsky, if you don't mind starting, sir. What is the biggest challenge you feel you have faced as mayor?
Is this on? I guess it is. Well, thank you, Jenna. And I just want to take a second to thank Alan Rumrill. He's, up until Jenna, he's the only executive director that the Historical Society has ever had. And his vision, this is the concrete, you're in the concrete manifestation of his vision. He's just done a tremendous job. We've been so lucky to have him. Now, your question was about challenges that the mayor has faced. Well, the overriding challenge that we have in the city of Keene is to keep the city the wonderful city that it is. I don't know how many citizens realize how fortunate you are to live in Keene. We're the educational center, we're the banking center, we're the industrial center, of the county. And the citizens of Keene are great. So the challenge of the mayor is to give all the services to keep Keene the great place it is, and do it within a reasonable budget so that the taxes are not unduly high. That was the challenge that I felt.
Thank you. I guess I would repeat what Aaron said. Is that thank you to Alan and to Jenna for putting on this program and celebrating the 150th anniversary of Keene becoming a city. I feel a little naked up here. I'm used to having Patty sitting beside me, and she's up back doing refreshments, which is something that I've seen her do many times. But you know, I'm more used to having her sitting beside me, whispering in my ears to think things that I need to keep in mind.
So the biggest challenge, I mean, it was 3 months into my first term that COVID really hit. So I have to say that was the biggest challenge. Not in that it really changed what the role of mayor was necessarily, but the whole community was focused in right on what you were doing at that moment, probably more than many of the other mayors experienced. And so that was challenging, but it was also just, there was a silver lining around that experience because I got to see the city of Keene's emergency operation and the leadership from the city manager and the city councilors and everybody, you know, get us all through. And that was everything from our first like Zoom meeting that we didn't really know. We were writing the script as we were going along in the play just about every day. And I was very proud of pretty much everybody that was involved. It was a really an experience that I'll remember forever. And I didn't have any real terrible, like it didn't give me shell shock from being involved in government or anything. It really was inspiring. And so if there was one positive thing that came out of that time period for me, that was it.
And it was a pleasure to work with Mayor Hansel as the state senator as we struggled through that with business dislocations and restarts. But I guess I would say that transparency and engagement in government is something that I've carried over from my concerns with serving in the state senate and now as mayor. And I can think of it in so many layers, whether it's relative to some issues that need to remain somewhat confidential, but in which the community has a great deal of interest. If a child dies as a result of something happening in the school, the community has a great deal of concern. If there is drugs or shooting in the city of Keene, the city has an appropriate, and the residents have appropriate concerns. If there are conflicts of interest that exist between municipal officials and their other interests, whether it's business or spousal interests in the community, there's a matter of what are the motivations of people who serve in public elected positions that needs to be transparent to people. If you choose to run for elected office, you are choosing to be more transparent in your relationships and the dealings. And it's also true when we dealt with the Palestinian question as to whether the city should take a role in non-germane issues. Can we be more transparent if 14 out of 15 councilors don't believe that that's something that should come before the city council? Can we develop a rule that says that the city council generally will not take this up so that the community understands what the proclivity of the city council is? We can always overcome our rules. We can always suspend them and take up a non-germane question. So these are questions that I think exist for the city to deal with, and ones that I want to continue to approach, because I think that transparency in government is one of the most important roles that a city, that an elected official can advocate.
As a follow-up, you all have me thinking, are there any particular challenges that you had hoped to come up with a solution for, but you weren't able to do in the time that you had? And I would put that out to anybody. Are there certain things that you would wish you could have finished?
Is that all right?
Well, something just came in to my head, and it's something that I wasn't successful in doing, and it may be on the trivial side, but it involves the interplay between city government and its citizens. And there was a situation, I and the city manager at that time, who was the city manager during my time, Pat McQueen. We went out and we walked on Beach Hill, the area between Jordan Road and North Lincoln Street, just beyond Reservoir Street. It's a fairly steep section. Well, I had known, my parents had said in the 1930s they had climbed up to where Sunset Rock was, and they looked over the city of Keene. And I remember them taking me up when I was a young child. Well, we noticed that the trees had grown up from the original Sunset, in front of the original Sunset Rock. There probably was about a dozen or so trees. It wasn't great. So we asked the city council if we could, cut them down. There are plenty of trees on Beach Hill. Well, we got such pushback from the residents of Reservoir Street. Now, people want to protect their homes, and not in my backyard is sometimes a good thing, sometimes it isn't. And sometimes people overreact, as they did in that time. Well, we had several hearings on it, and they came and they made such a pitch that the council did not cut down those trees. So it ended up Sunset Rock got moved to behind where the cable TV tower is. But I was disappointed that the Sunset Rock of my youth and of my parents and of the citizens of Keene who had lived here a long time couldn't have the original Sunset Rock.
I actually do remember that vote. And I was one of the ones that voted no. Another issue that came up, and I was on the city council. I actually chaired one committee, and I was vice chair of another committee when Aaron was mayor. And probably the most divisive public hearing that I ever had to sit through, and that Aaron had to chair, was a proposal that came up to combine the police and the fire into a public safety committee. And the community was outraged and totally opposed to it. And we ended up moving the public hearing over into the middle school because it would hold more people, and the room was full, and there was nobody in support of it. And it was a very ugly public hearing. For me, the thing that I wanted to accomplish, that I tried to accomplish, but I failed, what was the downtown Keene. That it was in the CIP. It was clearly that it was coming. That there was going to be a significant change to downtown Keene as a result of water and sewer work that had to be done, and the downtown was going to have to be dug up. And I set up a committee, and we started working on seeing, okay, if we have to dig it up, what's it going to look like when we put it back? And we really did not get a lot of support. The council did not support us in trying to do that. So when I left office, that was unfinished business that got passed on to George. George struggled with it for 4 years, and then it's now in front of Jay, and hopefully we're finally getting to a resolution. But it was I always considered it unfortunate that we couldn't get the council to buy into it at the time that I was mayor, because our chances of getting some federal grants was substantially enhanced if we had been able to move quicker on that project. But the council simply did not want to address it at that point, and they really didn't want to address it when George was mayor either.
I was going to say the downtown project too, and I remember specifically when it came up again after probably, let's see, it was into my second term really. And I remember the conversation with the city manager and the public works director at the time, and they came in to talk to me to sort of give me the pitch to bring up this project again. And I just was, I had seen what had happened I was a city councilor during the first run, so I knew.
George actually voted against it the first time.
And I knew what was going. I knew what it meant. I knew what it meant really for. It was going to be a difficult thing for the community to go through. I knew what it meant for me as mayor, that I probably wasn't going to be able to get the city where it needed to go and still be the mayor. And all of those decisions were sort of made in that time period. So that was a difficult thing, and it was, as a you know, you have to weigh all these factors. It's what's the right thing to do for the city, what's possible with the city council and with the public, and ultimately, you know, made the decision to move forward. I feel like it was par for the course for my term. When you think about being mayor, running for office like that, you automatically, naturally come up with these sort of plans, like not plans that you think you're going to do, but things that you think are important and that you can get done. And you find out very, very quickly that the world doesn't care about your plans. and you sort of, you have a few options then. I mean, when you realize what's possible, you realize where the community is at that moment, and whether or not it's congruent with your ideas and where you could go. You either kind of lean into it, and it may not be what you wanted, what you expected, but you lean into it and you accept the role that's given to you, or you get frustrated and do something else, I guess. I decided that this is my term. We're getting through COVID. We're going to tackle this big, nasty project that's going to divide the community and be really difficult, and I'm going to own it. So, and that's what it ended up being.
Well, I won't deny that that's an important issue that we have fortunately put on the right track, and we've got a couple of counselors, Greenwald and Filio, who chair that committee and have helped the public gain greater acceptance of it. And the city manager's been working on this for as long as she's been in the city of Keene. So, but I would add the one that is frustrating for me, I'm sure our other mayors have considered it, is the old railroad property to the west side of downtown on Gilbo Ave and interior to that. I think we can all recognize it's underutilized space, that there's one primary owner of that, and that primary owner needs to feel motivated and appropriately to dispose of the property so that it can be redeveloped. It poses wonderful opportunities, but it takes an owner that is motivated to sell. So yeah, that's just a work in progress, moving at about a turtle's pace.
All right, so enough of challenges for now. Let's talk about accomplishments that you take pride in most. And maybe we could start with Mayor Lane. Do you mind to start? Something you're most proud of.
Me? Sorry about that. I want to put this answer in a little bit of perspective. Keene really adopted city manager form of government in the early 1950s. The city government, once we had a city manager, that really changed the way city government operated. We have what is known as a weak mayor's form of government, which means the mayor all by himself has very little authority. I ran city council meetings, I sat on the planning board, I made appointments, but even those had to be approved by the city council. So that when I talk about what was accomplished during my term as mayor, I don't want to let anybody think that I think that they were accomplished by me personally. I worked to put together a team, the city manager, the mayor, and the city council, and we worked collaboratively to achieve a variety of things that were important while I was mayor. I would say the first one, and one of the ones that I'm most proud of, really happened in 2012. We had substantial flooding in Keene. Much of the city was underwater. huge amount of damage. A lot was done. A lot, you know, houses were basically made uninhabitable as a result of that. Working with the city manager and the city council, we put together a program of well over $1 million to upgrade the stormwater system, to dredge out and clean out the Beaver Brook. We worked with FEMA to buy some houses that were then turned into pocket parks because the houses were no longer habitable. A tremendous amount was done to mitigate the impact of climate change and the impact of that flooding. And that's really a major accomplishment by the city. And since then, although we've had some significant rainfall and some significant storms, we have not had the flooding that we had in 2012. The other thing that I would like to say that really was a significant accomplishment, we built a number of outdated buildings that we rebuilt. We did the library. We did the central fire station. We kept the courthouse in Keene. John McLean is here, and he remembers when we went over and met with the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and she told me that I should just order it done. I didn't need council approval, and that if anybody appealed it, that she would overrule them. I thought John was going to fall through the floor when she said that. Fortunately, I had known the Chief Justice for a long, long time, and I knew that she wasn't serious. But I think John might have thought she was for a moment. That I wanted to see some redevelopment on the east side of Main Street, because that area had been neglected. MoCo moved in there. We had several meetings with MoCo to assist them, and they built their new facility. Pat Russell Park was started during my time as mayor, and you know, that has become a showpiece, you know, and in fact we're expanding on it right now. So that the structural improvements that took place during the time that I was mayor were really important for the city going forward. Keene Ice was developed during that period of time. Those were all projects. I don't claim individual success for them, but I do claim that the partnership that I put together, that also included MEDC and Jack Dugan, made those projects possible. And it was the city's participation as well as private participation that made those projects successful. And that's probably, you know, those things are probably what I'm most proud of during that 8-year period.
I really tried to focus and get folks on board with figuring out what the important things really were and what the sort of smaller things that, not a waste of time, but I tried to get people focused on the really important things. And it's obviously, as Kendall said, it's all team efforts. I mean, a lot of these projects and everything span multiple mayors and multiple councils and multiple staff members sometimes and leaders. So it's sort of our stewardship of those projects while we're there. But I am proud that the land use code got focused on, that there was a recognition that we were, we needed to encourage development and take positive steps to do that if we were going to get the housing we need, if we're going to have any chance of attracting new businesses to Keene, that we needed to like get our house in order. And so a lot of city councilors recognize that too, and the city manager obviously, and we sort of set that as a real goal, and we made some really big progress there. It's all behind the scenes stuff, you know, people don't really see a lot of it, but there was such a tremendous amount of work. And one of the things I'm really proud of, and it's not a personal accomplishment, but it's through the city manager and the department heads. There were department heads that stood up and said, you know, I can do this, like we can do this. And it wasn't in their professional best interest to do that, but they recognized that it was an important thing for the city, and they took on a lot. Like they took on a lot. Some that were in the last few years of their careers, you know, and they took the heat, they took the public heat, and that was really good to see. One other thing that I'll highlight, the 21 and 21 program was a collaboration. It was kind of what I tried to do to bring folks together around solving a very specific problem, which was a lot of older homes on the east side of Keene that needed weatherization. And so went to Southwestern Community Services, hooked them up with some funding, and we worked with the city of Keene to identify areas where it wasn't a ton of funding. It was like $1 million or $1.5 million or something. But we knew that if we have it targeted to the right place, that it was going to have a tremendous impact on people's lives. I know it did. I mean, they fixed up houses. There are people in Keene that are living more comfortably now than they were before this program existed. And it's not a ton of people. It might be like 20. But as winter's coming on, I'm thinking about those 20 people, and it warms my heart to think that their life is better than it was before I was there.
Well, I got to thank my predecessors for those things. Our city is stronger and better because of it. But coming out of the COVID era, I felt, and I think the community lacked engagement in civic affairs, and I've tried to focus on that. I'll give you some examples. One is that we have a new city councilor who's from the college, Jacob Favolis. That's a connection into city government that we haven't had before. The creation of a mayor's youth council, working with the principal at Keene High School to try to engage 15% of our population in the city is school-aged kids. And how do we engage them, particularly as we're going through a new master plan, something we haven't taken up in 15 years, and is supposed to have an outlook for the next 15 years. We need to engage younger voices and opinions in that master plan. So the Mayor's Youth Council becomes an important vehicle for doing that. Reigniting the Keene Downtown Group, and Ed Haas, a new counselor, is here, who's really invested a great deal of his time to reorganize the Keene Downtown Group, which is really important for where we're going with the downtown project and trying to keep the vitality and activities going in the downtown while that project is taking place. Those are trying to bring new voices into city government through appointment processes. So these are the things that I think a mayor can do. It's beyond the role of what the city manager is, the chief administrative officer of the city. It extends the mayor beyond just the proclamations. It's every time there's that opportunity. You guys have done the proclamation route. There are at least 52. There are more proclamations than there are weeks in a year. But it engages you with people in the community, and every time you've got that opportunity, it's how can we pull more people into city government? And I think that's really a vital role that the mayor can play.
Yeah, something just struck me or occurred to me. I've been on a number of committees, and I'm sure all you people have. And one of the committees was the city council, and I was the leader of it as mayor. Every committee, every city council reinvents the wheel. The wheel gets reinvented every time there's a new council. I'm not sure quite. Jay just said that it's the first time there's a Keene State College student on the city council, and that's true. But when I was mayor, I met actually with Jay and Judy Sternick, who was the president of Keene State College, and Judy Sternick would come to special meetings for college relations. So we were concerned and we were engaged. The city was engaged with the college. We had efforts to working with the college to try to cure the non-residential students in their apartments in the city and the uproars that they would have. But a lot of the things that are being done today or thought of today were done in previous mayors' terms, were done in my term, and they were done undoubtedly before me.
We don't want this to become a competition between mayors as to who did what. But I would just say that after the riots during the Pumpkin Fest in 2014, 2015, Ann Hewitt and I set up a College City Commission that was composed of students as well as city councilors that was designed to bring the students closer into the community. So that, I mean, I commend Jay for the efforts that he's making, but Aaron's right. I mean, we reinvent the wheel every time there's a new mayor, and you know, that's just the way the system works.
Thank you. I'd like to do one from the audience. And maybe we can start with Mayor Hansel here, willing and able. As mayor, what did you personally do to keep something special in Keene alive? Or maybe if there's somebody who wants to respond first.
Do something special. You have an idea? You know, I think there is this tradition of just having leaders from the various groups throughout town really work closely together and developing those personal relationships. So that's the mayor having a really close relationship with the president of the college, having a relationship with the person in charge of the hospital and some of the business leaders and stuff like that. My job to maintain that tradition was pretty easy. I mean, again, we had COVID, so it's like we were meeting every week. I probably got to know those folks better than I would have liked, but it was a good. It's a good thing. It's a good thing because you need that leadership and that gives you some cohesiveness too, because every 2 years there's an election, things change or whatever, or someone retires, and so it's nice to just have that tradition and that recognition of those big players in the city that get together and try to move the ball on things.
I'm going to use that question to talk about the manufacturing consortiums and its various evolutions. I know at the college I worked with the Chamber of Commerce to create and establish through a grant the Regional Center for Advanced Manufacturing. After I left the college and George was elected mayor, he picked that up and turned it into its next evolution, which was the Keene Area Manufacturing Consortium. When George left office, he has other, he needs to advance his professional activities, and so there was a transition from George to me to continue it. I leaned on Steve Fortier, who's with the state's Business and Economic Affairs Office, to co-chair that continuation with me. And just to give you a vision, why is this important? We have in Keene optics engineering businesses that produce 75% of the machinery that produces optics fine precision manufactured products for the world. 75% of those machines come from this region of the country. And this is as important to this future of New Hampshire as the biofab innovations are to the city of Manchester and to the state of New Hampshire. So our goal, next meeting, is to begin to organize a day with the commissioner for business and economic affairs, to come to Keene and see how vital this industry, this consortium of businesses located within the 30-mile region of Keene is to the future of the state of New Hampshire. And in the hopes that as they begin to talk about the future of the economy, the new governor coming in, that Keene is on the map and has an important position for the next governor and the commissioners that she appoints.
Anyone else? Yeah, you good?
Yeah.
If you'd like to.
Right. Can you repeat the question? I've been listening and fascinated by the good answers of the other mayors. Go ahead.
Okay, as mayor, what did you personally do to keep something special in Keene alive?
Well, I guess as Kendall said, a lot of the things that you do are done by other people. And one thing that comes to my mind, I did not, in the city council, well, maybe they had a little bit to do with it, but it wasn't their plan. It was the start of the Pumpkin Festival when I was mayor. And we facilitated it, but we weren't the people that started it or ran it.
I'm not going to claim the Pumpkin Festival. One of the things that I really worked hard at when I was mayor, I set up a lot of special committees. Patty used to get really frustrated with me because I was always setting up special committees. Because I never felt like all the expertise in the city didn't reside with the city council or with the city staff. The citizens, we work for the citizens. We work for the people that live here. We work for the people that shop here, that have their jobs here. So I was frequently setting up special committees and bringing in non-city people, non-official people to sit on those committees and provide us with the expertise and provide us with the assistance to move forward on topics. That's one of the things that makes Keene really unique, and it has for a long time, is that when there's a problem in this city, it's amazing the number of groups that will come together to work on those problems. That the problems really, the solutions really end up being developed from the bottom up, not from the top down. So that's really, even though we've got 23,000 people here, we really do have a small community, a very tight community relationship. And there's a huge amount of expertise that works here, that lives here, that is associated here. And we do everything we can to bring those forward and to utilize them in making the city a better place.
Well, you've all been speaking about hard work. So here's the next question, and I think we'll start with you, Aaron, if you don't mind. All right. How many hours a week do you estimate you spend on the job?
A lot.
Many. It's not a 40-hour-a-week job. It's a 7-day, 24-hour-a-week job. That when you're mayor, you're always on duty. When you go out to eat and people will stop to talk to you, you go to the library and people will stop to talk to you. It's constant. I was in City Hall every single day, but I was on duty all the time. And in one capacity or another, I was working. If I counted the number of meetings that I had to go to, after I had done 8 years, my wife really wanted me to step down. She said, I don't want to keep sitting here alone at night, every single night. It's time for you to be here once in a while. So that it's not a joke that when you are mayor, you are obligated to the city all the time. That becomes your life.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with Kendall. It's like a full-time, around-the-clock kind of job. I mean, I worked while I was mayor for a good portion of my term, but there was like a year where during COVID where I was going into City Hall all day, and there was just so much to do, and then so I mean it varied, but it was amazing when I wasn't mayor anymore, and I realized how much of my life was involved. Like, it was almost shocking, like, because you kind of convince yourself, you're like, oh, this is like it's like how you recruit everyone to run for city council. You say, oh, it's a meeting, one meeting a week, it's a breeze, it's no big deal. But I can tell you there aren't many city councilors that just are not putting in hours of work pretty much every day. And it just really does absorb your life. And then you step out of the role, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, that was more than a full-time job. So.
I think you folks are sending me to marriage counseling. Well, and so here's the positive side to this. I feel so connected to the community and its events and the organizations that have been referenced. We have an abundance of organizations, probably more than we can support, but they keep perpetuating. We've got, and it's great. And so I feel one of the things I can fulfill is being a presence at other people's events. And it's really a great way to learn about your community and to hear, the kinds of messages that others have said they go to a restaurant. But it feels really good to see the vibrancy of Keene on display on a regular basis. And how many hours? I have no idea. I don't really want to know.
Our next question. What ways do you feel like, and what ways did you like to get input from the public? Are there specific ways you like to do that?
I think I addressed that. So take it away.
Well, first of all, I think I was fortunate when I was mayor because we did not have the internet. We did not have social media, and I think that was a tremendous advantage. As far as getting input, I'd like to get all the input I could. Obviously, you get formal input at public hearings before the city council. But you'd get input when you go into a restaurant and people would come up with issues that concern them. When you'd walk down Main Street, and Main Street, when I was mayor, the citizens were a lot of more longtime citizens of Keene. I think Keene has become more transient as we've gone on, so that you knew, a lot of the people that that you saw growing up and all. And so you get input from them. People would call you on the phone, sometimes at 2 in the morning, and those were usually irate people, and they made me irate.
I did a lot of the social media stuff and Zoom, and I was doing a Zoom every morning for a couple of months there, and we had hundreds of people sometimes that would be logging in to just like ask questions or get updates or whatever. And I remember several months later, one of my neighbors actually came up to me and she said, "Oh, I love those Zooms that you were doing. I woke up with you every morning." And I was like, "Don't tell people that." I don't know if my girlfriend would feel about that, but it was fun because I think it was an important thing to people during that time. I can tell you probably something that you don't hear. There is like a negative side to the communication thing. Like some of the letters that, everybody who has a problem writes a letter to the mayor. And when they're in all caps and they are really nasty, some of the worst, most hateful stuff you can imagine. There were more of those than I would have liked to have seen. And And it really does kind of bring you down because you're working for the community, you're doing all this stuff. And it wasn't usually even personal attacks against you. Sometimes it was. Those are actually easier because it's like, yeah, sure, whatever, that's politics. But there were some really like angry people in the community, hateful, racist stuff, like really bad. And that stinks because that way, like, they don't send them to everybody, they send it to the mayor. And you have to, that's kind of a burden that you have to carry through your term.
In the interest of, really? I mean, the nasty grams aren't so bad. I think it's calmed down. I think we went through a period, politically in our country that sent us into, some communications that were impersonal and could be more outrageous than they should have been. I hope we've passed that, and I think what the kinds of communications that I get, I do appreciate the relationship that I have with the city manager. We generally will sit down and talk about those communications, and is there a response? Because you want to be responsive to people if there's some legitimacy to it, or counter their misperceptions if there's a way to do that. So, yeah. You got about 20 minutes.
Well, I'm glad that things have settled down for Jay. When I was mayor and the Free Keeners were active, the obscene emails were a regular diet. That the attacks on the city, the attacks on me, the attacks on the city council were huge. I didn't do social media simply because it would have opened up a new avenue for negativity that was not productive. The best way that I had to include the public in the discussion was appointing people that to as many boards and commissions as, I think there were about 300 people that I appointed to various official boards and commissions, but there were a lot of special committees that I set up that also brought people aboard and get as much input from a variety of people within the city as I possibly could. And then I was always available for phone calls, check the emails when they were civil, and answer people's questions, but also get as much input as I possibly could. And I had some really good people that were appointed during the time that I was mayor, people I didn't know ahead of time, and that had some interest in the city. And everybody that I appointed, I met with first. I had them all commit. Everybody that I appointed came into my office, and I talked to them and met with them and talked about what their aspirations were and where they saw the city going, so that I knew who I was appointing, and that really gave me a good insight into the community.
I think we'll just do maybe one or two more. All right. If you're feeling good.
Who's doing this?
The audience, you're doing all right? All right. I really don't know who could answer this, so it's a free-for-all. Keene's mayor-city manager combination is somewhat unusual. Why was this system chosen by the city?
It's not unusual. There are many city mayor, city managers. It's one of the standard forms of government because we wanted professional. We wanted professionals like John McClain or Pat McQueen or Mrs. Elizabeth Dragon to run our city. They're people that have degrees and experience and know how to run a city.
Yeah, it is the more normal. Manchester and Nashua are about the only cities in the state that don't have city managers. I think every other city in the state does have a city manager. A lot of the towns have town managers, so that it's the normal way of running government professionally. I would say that Keene adopting the city manager form of government was about as divisive as adopting the city form of government. It was originally put in about 1946. It was then abolished in 1948. It was put in again about 1950. It was then abolished again. And it really wasn't until around 1953 or 54 that it finally, we finally had a city manager. And then it was because of a divided vote. Very honestly, back then when you ran for mayor, you ran on a partisan basis. And Keene was, at that point, was a very Republican city. And it was only because there was division between the Republicans that we ended up with the city manager, that the Democrat running for mayor and part of the Republicans supported the city manager. The other part of the Republicans were opposed to it. And so there was really a coalition that changed the charter to allow the creation of a city manager that has stuck. But also at the same time, we moved to a nonpartisan basis. And to be very honest, during all the years that I was on the city council and all the years that I was mayor, I always operated on a nonpartisan basis. I never allowed politics to come into the role or to come into City Hall.
I really liked the city manager mayor form of government. I think it works really well because it really does separate out the politics from the administration and just getting the job done. I guess it does depend somewhat on the personalities of the people that are in those positions, but working with Elizabeth was great. I wish I still worked with her. Frankly, it was a really, we were very lucky and we made an excellent decision in choosing her. And I think when we first started working together, it was just very clear where the boundaries were, and we sort of had a partnership where it was like we were on the same page. It was great, and it gave me the flexibility to work with the council, work with the public, like do all the stuff that mayors should be doing without worrying about a personnel issue going on at the fire department or something like that, which is, definitely takes a lot of the burden of the mayor's job away. And I hope that it was like that in reverse when there were issues with the council or issues with the public, where the mayor can really step in and either be the heavy or be the console somebody or take on whatever role is necessary to sort of alleviate the city manager a little bit.
The thing that is coming to mind here is I knew the manager before Pat McQueen, and that was Jim Hobart. And Jim, after he left the City of Keene role, went on to serve at Keene State College and then at Plymouth State University, at the time, college. Anyway, I think we learn a great deal from our city managers. What I learned from each one of them is something different and unique because they just have different traits, approach things differently. I think we've been really, really fortunate to have people, high quality leaders in our city manager form of government. Yeah, just stop there. Maybe we'll get to that next question.
Well, one thing I wanted to bring up is that we've had many mayors over the years, and we have this wonderful reflection series film that we have showing in the exhibit gallery. So if you wanted to hear from mayors of the past and some of the things that were going on in the 60s and 70s, it's fascinating to come and listen to. It's about an hour-long film. And we get to hear Aaron Lipsky every day when we come to work talking about the internet. So I would encourage you to come and do that. But
Sorry, Aaron.
I'd like to pass the mic now so we can maybe speak to some of those mayors in the past.
Could I just say something before you, Rick? I'm going to ask a trivia question, and I think most of you know the answer, but if you don't, I think you should. all of us have something in common. We may have other things, but there's something in common that we all have. And does anybody want to take a crack at that answer? Well, there have been female mayors. Well, the correct answer is the lady in back of the room. She has been the city clerk. Patty Little for all of us.
Aaron, you stand up. Well, that's right. We don't all have to stand anymore in city council, but sorry. There's one other factor that they all have to deal with. That's councilophilia. I do want to make mention.
Can we go back to the biggest challenges?
I do want to make mention of the mayors that aren't with us that have passed. Mayor Lipsky had a really aggressive council from what I've heard, stories from Council Filio. Mayor Lynch kind of harnessed us a bit, got us organized. Mayor Russell, unbelievable when I think back to the things that we accomplished in those years. And then Mayor Blastos, Mayor Pregent, handing off to those that are with us now. We've come a long way, and we've built on that, and it's a strong city council that works together with the mayor, and I'm just very, very pleased to have been part of it all. So thank you all for coming.
Can I add one thing at this point? I want to say I've known Patty almost since she first became the city clerk, going back a few years, and she's been a friend. She's been a confidant. She's been somebody that I just can't imagine the city without her. She's been the glue that's held us all together, and I really am going to miss her tremendously when she decides to retire in April.
You're going to miss her. Yes, indeed.
Well, I just want to thank each and every one of you for coming and sharing with us this evening, and all of you for coming and listening. And as we head off to go eat and drink food, I would have you consider what is it that we would love to see for the next 150 years of our city. So thank you all.